Welcome to an introduction to Robotech and how to RPG. I know I'll be losing some veteran players as soon as the how to RPG part comes up. An introduction to Robotech is more interesting to them, I understand. But this video is meant to be not just an introduction to Robotech, but also a video for people who don't know what an RPG is. And you'll notice two different camera angles when in this video, because one of my viewers, specifically my sister, said that seeing my messy shed wasn't really all that nice. I don't see it as being that messy, but it is messy though, I will admit that. Just not that bad, not as bad as she made it out to be. So I used a different camera angle to show less of the shed. Let me know which one you like. Or if you'd rather prefer, I actually put up a filter. But I'd prefer not to put up a filter because I really like showing off my books. I really like it when YouTubers like what I'm doing show off their books in their background. It's kind of what I prefer, so it's what I like to do. I hope you enjoy the video, and let me know how you feel about all my camera angles. As I said, when it comes to the introductions, I don't tend to read it word for word, just the parts that I feel are important, which is the first little bit of each paragraph. Alright, we start with, Welcome to the world of Robotech. In the preceding pages, you will find the television series accurately and loyally recreated. I honestly wouldn't know that. I am not very familiar with the games. Or with the show. I'm actually pretty familiar with the game now. I'm just not very familiar with the show because I never got a chance to watch it. With that said, the reason why I decided to cover Robotech as my first book was because I asked people, and that's kind of the one they wanted to see, when I first started reading Robotech, which was before I started doing this series, was immediately grabbed my attention, and I really wanted to play it. So I'm really excited to be doing this. Robotech, the RPG series, will go beyond simply emulating the TV show. Thanks to Carl, I cannot pronounce that last name, and the people at Harmony Gold's USA Inc., I don't know if they're still in business, we will have the unequaled opportunity to build onto the existing series. We will be able to create the intervening 9 years between the destruction of the SDF-1 and 2 and the launch of SDF-3. I'm not going to go too much on the rest of these topics because we cover these in the future books and part of this book for a couple of them, so I don't need to go too detailed in that paragraph. And the advantage of role-playing games is that the fabric of space and time is yours to mold. You, the player, are not stuck in any one scenario, setting, or timeline. That is very important because when I read this book, I felt that they weren't trying to put you in the shoes of any of the main characters of the series. Yes, I don't know the series, but the way I read the book is you're supposed to have an adventure separate from the series. You're supposed to build, as it says, those 9 years. Right here. We will be creating the intervening 9 years. That's part of where I get the feeling that you're not supposed to play main characters of the story. You're supposed to play characters of your own creation. I've already lost a few people. Not a big surprise, not too many people need to know this, but for those who do, role-playing games are really just advanced forms of regular board games. In fact, they are so advanced that they no longer need boards. Some of the elements are still the same. You still need paper, pencil, dice, player, and the main thing you need to play a role-playing game is imagination. I've actually met a few people who don't do so good in the imagination department, yet they insist on playing. Alright, you could see this actually has a pretty thick explanation. Like, all that. For imagine the scene. I personally feel that's actually a bit much. You can pause and read it for yourself, but I'm going to describe it how I would describe it. You walk into a room. You see a desk in front of you, some comfortable chairs on the far side with a large TV. There's a door off to your right-hand side, and some windows off to your left. And there's a clock over there. What are you doing? If they want to know how many comfortable chairs there are, I'll tell them there's 10. If they want to know what time it is, I'll tell them it's 3. If they want to glance out the window, I'll tell them it's the middle of the night. Some details aren't noticed by people unless they're specifically looking for them. So I ask for if the players want to know specific details, I make them ask. Giving away too many details as the DM can overwhelm new players. It can also leave you exhausted as a DM because you're sitting there constantly giving a huge explanation for every little detail when many of the times you don't need to. Like, you don't need to tell them there's 10 chairs. You don't need to tell them it's 3 o'clock. The middle of the night, potentially important. The fact there's 4 windows on that wall also doesn't matter. Can you picture the scene? Try to keep the mental image in your head. Don't worry if you forget the details. One of the great things about role-playing games is the way that your memory improves with practice. Now you are ready for the next step. Like I said, you wouldn't actually have to remember as many details with me because I wouldn't give you this level of detail right off the bat. It can be information overload sometimes. Imagine this setting. At the front of the door there is a mad-looking figure, I cannot pronounce that, I call them modernized. I cannot pronounce that, I call them Zetans. I know I'm going to get a few complaints for that, but I don't care. So, start from the beginning. At the front of the room, there is a mad-looking, modernized Zetan. He is looking around suspiciously. At his feet, there are two very frightened people, both in stained blue clothing. The Zetan points a large pistol at the people and screams in a hoarse voice, "Where's my money?" Obviously, there is some kind of crime taking place, and judging from the state of the criminal, his victims are in dire danger. The next step is to find out how you fit into all this. Yes, well, that really depends on you, which is actually coming up here in a moment. So now here comes the tricky part. Imagining the character. I'm going to read this very carefully right now. You are not there. Simple as that. But there is somebody in the room whose eyes you are seeing through. That person is your character. Imaginary individual that is your playing piece in this game. I have no better explanation. Normally you need to spend an hour or more developing a new player character. Once the character has been created, you will probably continue playing that character for many weeks, perhaps years. In our example, let us assume that you are playing Rick Hunter, a young lieutenant and commander in the Skull Squadron. Just picture yourself as Rick, standing at the far end of the room. That is a little bit of a zooming on their part, right there, because that is me saying you went to the far end of the room. Unless you said you went to the far end of the room, I'd say you're still standing by the door, because that is me presuming you did something, which is not fair of me as the DM. So I do take a few quibbles with a few things they talk about, but not many. Imagine action. Now, here, this actually should have had this little sentence right here. Should have had its own little section where they talk about this. Should have had its own little area where it talks about the DM. Instead it says, imagine the action. Actually, you need one important extra ingredient to make a role-playing game work. The game master, GM, is another player. I take quibble with that. I don't like another player. I find when a DM actually takes on the role of another player, he kind of usurps the campaign and makes it about the character he's playing and not about the party. I prefer the term GM is God. GM has no power over the player characters as to what they do, how they operate. He has to work with and dictate what happens in the world around them, which makes GM God, not a player. Very important distinction, and I kind of wish they didn't say player here. A real person who controls all the characters in the game except the different player characters. In this case, you are the only player, and I am acting as the GM. The Zetan has not yet noticed Rick standing quietly in the back of the room. The GM informs you, but he looks like he is about to shoot one of the janitors. What are you going to do? I could read this word for word. This section I'm actually going to skip by simply saying, do what you want to do. They give several examples here. I'm going to skip this first mini paragraph because this just gives a couple of examples that can honestly feel a little bit limiting if you don't think about it at first, and skip straight to the important part. In role-playing games, there are no important answers. There are also almost no limits to what you can do. The only restrictions are that you cannot go beyond the physical, mental, and emotional limits of your character. There's almost no limits to what you can do. That's just a perfectly accurate statement. I can't tell you how many times I've had players treat it like a video game and basically go, oh, well, I can't do it because I don't have this ability. Or, oh, I can't do it because I don't see it. It's like, you're not even looking. As another set of people who cover games like this said, it's almost as if they're waiting for the magical light up, press A button to appear somewhere in the room, which can be irritating as a DM. What you need to play. Other than imagination, players, game master, you also need the following. 2 sets of 4-sided dice. In fact, I can... It's here. Forgive me, I'm about to do something oh wait, no, I can't do that. That won't tell me. Never mind. Alright, let's hope I can get a good view on the camera. Alright, I got my dice right here. These are two 4-sided die. Man, I hope I'm getting a good view. If not, I'm going to have to cut it out. Next, they want 4 6-sided die. Let's see, what else? 2 8-sided die, which I have... No, almost lost them for a moment there. These are 8-sided die. D10 is what they ask for, but percentiles work exactly the same as the D10 Norman 2. And 2 D20s. Alright, D20, there you are. And 2 D20s. God, I hope I'm getting a good view. But I also like having, well, partially because they come as full sets now this way, but I also like having D12s. Sometimes a D12 can be useful for other things, like DM's rulings. I know it sounds a little odd, but it sometimes works out depending on what you're doing. Number 2, plenty of pencils and paper. Yes. And number 3, Game Master and players at least a total of 2 plus the GM. I prefer not to do one-on-one campaigns, but I can. Alright, next video, Glossary. Not just of role-playing terms, but of Robotech terms as well. Hope to see you there. Have a great day.